Oh no. We're on the side of the road.
I'm gonna make something great. That's my way.
This is usually fairly frightening.
I'm gonna make something great. That's my way.
When I was messing around looking through the back of the car when I originally got it, I found a new HID kit. So I'm gonna install that right now. I got my assemblies just sitting here and I'm gonna plug them in. I got one headlight working, thankfully, so I figured out that all these ballasts that were in the MX-3 are bad. So, like, this entire HID kit came in this car, like in a box kind of thing, that box to be exact. And unfortunately, not all of the ballasts work, only one works. I'm gonna try these two later and make sure again, but all I'm gonna do is steal one from my purple MX-3 because it barely gets driven at night. And technically at the track, you only need one headlight to legally drag race on the track. I'm just gonna mount my working ballast over here where it can't be seen. So when I have to access it, I have to take the bumper off, but it won't be in here making a mess. I got a big box of goodies last night. So I got my tranny fluid, I got my boost gauge, I got my carbon gauge pod. Honestly, I ordered a black one, but this will do the trick, like whatever. I'm gonna complain if I ever get around to it, so I probably will never complain to the guy, but yeah, I'm gonna install him and also tranny fluid. So we're getting there, I'm gonna show you quick how I would fill my tranny full of fluid. So I'm gonna loosen up the fill, which is on the side of the tranny here, and she's tight, but I'll get her loose with the camera in my hand, you know what I'm saying? Anyways, loosen this guy off. He's basically on the driver's side, and it's a big, oh, that was under pressure. And there's a big bolt that goes in the tranny, and that's where you fill. And it's actually facing upwards, so it's really hard to fill. The way I fill it is I get a hose like this that will fit in the hole, that will also fit on top of your jugs that you can buy at the parts stores. So you put this end, which is the end with nothing on it, into the hole. Just like so. Shove her in there pretty good. And then move this up here. So then when I put my jug onto it, I can put a hole in it on the top and I can walk away. So this will just drain right into the tranny. I'll do that with 2 jugs. And another thing that helps is if you run this under hot water for a couple minutes, it'll go in like probably in 30 seconds. But this way with it cool, it'll take probably 10-15 minutes to empty the whole jug, which I don't care because I have other things to do as well, so we can do that while I'm working. So all it is a hose with a zip tie on the end that's attached to the tip, with the tip uncut. So you gotta make sure that's done right, or you're gonna get your tranny fluid everywhere. And then once you've got her in a good position, put a couple holes in the top, make sure it's in the top or you're gonna get all over your windshield. And then you should be good to go to work on other things while your tranny's being filled. And that's great because usually this is a pain in the ass when you're a beginner and all that. So you just gotta make sure it's a straight shot and a straight loop. So that should do the trick. This is gravity the whole way. Go down a little, perfect. All right, now I leave it. All right, I'm gonna start with wiring my fan. This is the first thing I'm doing today. So I'm gonna make a connector, another 2 like we did inside underneath the dash, just so it's easier later on, just so I don't have to cut wires. I used to do that all the time, just hardwire everything. It's just stupid. I'm doing connectors all the time now. So I'm gonna make a connector, then run 2 wires. this one female connector done. It looks mint. Now I gotta do the fan side, which is right here. And there you have it, a nice connector. Now I gotta do is put some tape or some sort of insulator on it, and I'm good to go. So I've got those two ran to my dash, and that's how I'm gonna be rocking my fans. Gonna have it on the ignition so it won't run when it's on the ignition, and it's gonna be on a switch as well so I can turn it on and turn it off when the ignition's on. Sweet, she's ran. I tucked it under a bunch of shit so it's not as visible, and it's all taped. Awesome. Can barely see the puppy. Anyways, I'll deal with cleaning it up more later. I'm just gonna worry about wiring it. Okay, we're back here under the dash. I've got my two wires from my fans. I don't know which way it's wired yet because I have to figure out the direction I want my fan to go in. So it can be wired either way because electric motors can be wired either way. The only difference switching it around reverses it or forwards it. So it's gonna be counterclockwise or clockwise. So I'm gonna have to figure that out. I'm just gonna cut the wires both the same length. Wire one to my positive, which is here, because we already connected it to a switch 12 volt here. This one's my wideband, so yeah. I'm gonna cut it, wire that in, and then ground the other one and see which way my fan is turning, and then I can figure out which one I want it at, and then wire it in hard. Yes, this looks like a disaster, but it's controlled, don't worry. So I've got one wired to the positive switched, and I've got a ground here. So I'm gonna turn the ignition on, which will send power to here, to my fan, and then I can see which way the fan is spinning. So I'm just gonna turn the ignition on. So what you want is you want the air to be sucked from here through here. And that is exactly what is going on. So it's sucking air through here, which is cold air that is coming from ahead and not in the engine bay, and bringing it through here. Perfect. That was a 50-50 guess, and somehow I was right. So I'm not gonna think too much about it and just move on. Okay, I'm back here, and I'm going to mark the black wire, which is here, and put it with all my other grounds, just so I don't somehow get something mixed up. I'm wrapping it in black pieces of tape, and black is an indicator for ground. So these are all gonna get ground to the chassis. These ones are all gonna get switched. I got a nice little push button switch. I'm kind of addicted to them. They illuminate very nice colors. This one I got, it's red, so I'm stoked about that. And it's easy. It's got 3 pins. Whoa, it looks like a lot more than that. Anyways, I'll tell you how I'm gonna do it. I actually changed my mind. I'm gonna be running the fan to my ignition so it's on constant until I get a switch that has a high enough current rating to run my fan, because my fan has a high current rating and the switch I bought unfortunately doesn't have the capabilities. So I'm gonna use that switch for my 2-step. So it's gonna be wired into my clutch, so it will be in the middle between my ECU and my clutch, so I can turn it on and turn it off. So I can free rev the car if I want, and downshift and rev match, and turn it on for when I'm racing, and then I can have the 2-step option. It'll be sick. Okay, so now I have to cut the wire that goes from the clutch to the ECU and tap in my switch in between. Also put power to it so it will illuminate red. That's why I bought it and wanted it. So I have a little bit more wiring to do, but it's gonna be sweet. This is the wire that is going from my clutch to the ECU. So I'm gonna cut it and then bring it through this hole that I made. I just have my switch sitting in there. So here's my wire that goes from the clutch to the ECU. So I'm gonna cut it and run 2 wires to here through this hole, and then I can put it into my switch. All right, I got my 2 wires, one from the clutch and one from the ECU right here, which is awesome. So all I need is one more wire, and that wire is from my switched ignition. So I need to bring one from this guy right here through this hole, and I can connect that to my switch, so the switch will illuminate once the ignition is on. I got my wire that I added in. It's the white and spotted one, and brought it out here as well. So I've got my 2 that I already talked about, and then my power. So now I can wire my switch in. She is all wired up. The red one, which is the switched ignition from the ignition, goes to the positive here. The wire that comes from the clutch is to here, and then the wire that goes to the ECU is here. So I have it bridged on the ECU side, so it will illuminate the switch when I press on the switch. And this guy is on the other part. So there's 4 pins. There's one for the positive for the light, the backlight in this thing. So that's this one. Second one is for the switch, and so when you press this switch in and out, it connects these 2 middle guys. And the last one is for the negative on the illumination of the switch. The way I have this wired is so when this wire is pressed, it will illuminate the switch when the ignition is on, because I have the ground hooked up to the switch as well. So this won't get grounded until this switch connects it to it. All right, I got her wired up. I have 2 prongs to the ECU side, 1 prong to the clutch side, and 1 to the power. And when I turn the ignition on, I have her lightened up, and then when I press it in, it's engaged, and when I'm not pressing it in, it's not. So I won't be able to rev up my engine very far if I have it pressed in. Here's my switch with the ignition off. Here's my switch with the ignition on. So this is 2-step off. This is 2-step on. So with it off, I can actually rev the engine out easier, because with the 2-step on, it will have a rev limit at about 3,000 RPM. So I won't be able to rev it freely with the clutch in and this switch on. So if I ever want to do spirited driving with lots of downshifting and rev matching, with this pressed in, it won't perform, because I won't be able to rev match over 3 grand, because it'll stop it because it's on a rev limit. That's what 2-step does. So I have this to turn it off, and that will do the trick for spirited driving on the street. Most people don't do this, but I do, so I can always turn it off if I want. Well, that really turned out. That is the sleekest little switch I've ever seen. I'm in love. I have one of these in my MX-3 as well. I have this for my line lock, but it's a intermediate switch. So this one is a switch. You press it in, on, press it on, in again, off. I'm gonna take a bit of a break from my wiring, and I'm gonna throw in this pillar gauge mount. So I'm gonna have to take some material off the top. I've already put her in to see. It looks awesome, but it's a little bit too long. So I want it to fit nice. I'm gonna do some trimming. So what I did here, I did a little line of grind here so I could adjust it. This is a piece of plastic. So when I put a half cut down here, I can move this and adjust this in or out. It was originally more straight, and it had a huge gap on the windshield. So since I did that, it made the fitment much better, and it's gonna work now. So now from the windshield, you'd be able to see in on the wires, and now all I gotta do is screw this guy in. Now it's time for me to install my wideband one, and the other one would be my boost gauge. All right, I fed the wires through, plugged the gauge in, and then put it in, and I'm gonna see if it's gonna work. 1, 2, 3. Sweet, it works. Now I have to do my boost gauge, and I'm gonna have to move all this shit around, but it'll work. This is already set up. Here's my boost gauge. These are very simple to wire. They have a vacuum line spot in the back, and you just have to bring it up to the engine bay, put it in, and you're gonna have to hook a vacuum line up to your intake from right here to your intake. And then you have positive and negative here for your backlights. I can't go any further until I get good vacuum line. I do have some, but it's kind of like cheap stuff. So I'm gonna go get vacuum line, and I'm gonna pick up my purple MX-3 and bring it back to my shop because I need to steal the wheels from it. And when this car's out, I want my car in. And I also need to get my clutch master from my house. I actually changed my mind. I'm just gonna go get some vacuum line and come right back because it looks like it's gonna rain and I don't have a hatch on my car. All right, me and Zeddy went and got some stuff from the parts store. We got vacuum line and went to my house, hood pins, clutch master, and some camera screens. I am gonna run the vacuum line from my boost gauge to where the vacuum line goes to on my ECU. I'm gonna tee it off there so I know exactly what my computer is seeing as well. So there is the vacuum line that goes to my ECU right here. So I'm gonna cut right here and then add a T. It's gonna run this to my boost gauge at the driver's seat, and that's it. I also just replaced these lights because I literally couldn't see anything in here. This is way better already, and I don't have my big LED one. So, amen to LEDs. Okay, again, I ran the vacuum line from the ECU above, down to the bottom of the dash, then up, and now it's over here, ready to go, and I'm going to put it into my gauge. I got my boost gauge in, and my AEM's already in, the wideband. So I'm going to wire the positive and the negative to my wideband, positive and negative, so it'll illuminate at the exact same time. All right, let's see how they look illuminated. Heck yeah. Boost gauge, wideband, we're ready to frickin' go. Now I've got to get this pillar up here mounted, got to figure that out, and then hide. All right, it's time to clean up this wiring mess inside underneath, tidy everything up, and then try it, see how it works, see how I like it. Right, here she is, all wired up. Here's my button for my launch control, the wideband, boost gauge. All right, I'm gonna take a break from wiring and I'm gonna install my clutch master. This is the last part that is stopping me from driving the car. The car would drive right now, but it doesn't have fenders, hood, bumper, you know what I mean. So this is the last piece of the puzzle. Hopefully this goes smoothly. I think it's going to. Now I'm gonna get this crusty old slave off. It's called the slave cylinder for the clutch, and I'm gonna take it off and install a new one. Okay, the clutch master's in. The clutch slave is also in, both brand new. It's also got a braided line for the clutch, so it's a lot more firm. There's no flexing. So now it's time to put some fluid in it. And the way I always do it is I reverse bleed. So there's a bleed nipple down there, as you can see. I use a syringe with a vacuum line on the end to fill up my reservoir. So I fill this up with fluid and then press it into the nipple with it just slightly cracked loose, and it'll push fluid all the way up, all in one motion, and it'll get all the air out into here, and you don't even have to bleed it after. So here's the nipple we were talking about. I'm just gonna crack it loose just a little bit. I'm gonna show you exactly how much I would do. Just crack it loose. Then put your syringe on to the nipple with your vacuum line. Then zip tie the syringe somewhere where it's not gonna fall on you. Just like so. And then put another zip tie on the hose that's on the nipple. Okay, I'm gonna fill it up about 3/4 just so I can get the end of my syringe in, and then I'll be able to pump it up. So that should be good. So now I just have to compress the syringe with my tip here and watch it go down. And I'm gonna go down right to about, there's a 1/2 inch left because you don't want to push air in. And then I have to make sure that I'm not gonna overfill my reservoir because this is where the fluid is gonna end up coming through. So you gotta keep an eye on that. Okay, I checked and I'm gonna compress it in. I put a new line on my master, so that's looking a lot better, and then I'm just gonna compress it in.
I'm gonna make something great. That's my way.
This is usually fairly frightening.
I'm gonna